Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
This is Triple Play, that podcast that's legal for 12 hours, because this month we watched The Purge, Purge Anarchy, and The Purge Election Year.
Written by James DeMonico.
Directed by James DeMonico.
And released in 2013, 2014, and 2016.
Yeah, we watched this paragon of cinematic filmmaking, The Purge, this month, because the first Purge, which is going to be really confusing, the first Purge is a movie that's a prequel to the
first Purge movie.
It came out this month on July 4th. So
first one not directed by James DeMonico.
Right. But it's still written by James DeMonico.
Yeah, he still has creative control over the series.
Kind of, I guess.
Well, that's
it's
something...
still produced too by James DeMonico, I think. Or I think he became a producer for the first Purge, yeah.
They were produced by... Well, Michael Bay was one of the producers.
As we found out when we were watching the credits, and we were shocked to learn that Michael Bay was involved in these movies.
Yeah. Well, who knows in what capacity, right? Like, some producers are hands-on, some aren't, some get really involved, and some are just sort of there in terms of funding or company-type stuff.
Well, it's Michael Bay, so I'm just going to assume he was really hands-on, especially in the second one.
The second and third, I think, are more obviously from a Michael Bay, if you know what I mean. The first one was on a really small budget.
Right.
I don't know what it was. It was in the low, like, millions.
$3 million, I think.
Which is actually really... It sounds like a lot, but that's actually really low.
For a movie, yeah. Well, I was reading
because it's from Blumhouse.
Yeah. That James DeMonico's like, we thought we'd raise like $500,000, do it as an indie, and then just like shop it around to studios. But the one producer... Hang on, I'm going to get his name. Sébastien Lemercier. I'm just going to assume that it's French and that's how you say it. Apparently James DeMonico and him worked together a lot, and he was like, no, there's a lot of potential here. So he went shopping the script around before they even filmed, and Blumhouse and Universal were like, yeah, we'll put up some money for this. So that's how they ended up, I guess, pitching the idea to the studios.
Yeah, I discovered during this, I don't know how true it is, I just found it on like a single article that 40% of Blumhouse or whatever it's called.
Blumhouse. We found out it's Blumhouse in that opening sequence to the third movie.
Oh, right. We're having Jason Blum come on
like,
screen and be like, watch these movies you've never heard of.
But I watch these on Amazon.
I read that 40% of their movies don't even make it to theaters.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me either. But I mean, now they're actually kind of a big name thanks to Get Out and a couple other ones. Insidious, Paranormal Activity.
The Purge.
Yeah, The Purge, I guess, too. Truth or Dare looked pretty... I don't know how well that did, but it looked pretty cool. Looked cool. I didn't watch it, but...
Was poorly received.
Yeah.
Both critically and commercially.
Yeah. Well, we should probably discuss how many times we've watched these movies like we always do.
Yeah.
Zero. Never. None. I knew what they were.
Zip.
I knew what they were, surprisingly. They were on my radar as things that existed, if not things I was going to watch.
The good old American tradition, the Purge. Every year, the annual tradition where we purge. We purge.
They should have released one of these every year on March 21st or 22nd or whenever it was.
Yeah, I don't know why they release them in July. I guess because they're super American movies, so they're trying to release them around July 4th, which is the most patriotic holiday in the world, let's be honest here.
I don't know, one time I was in Canada for Canada Day, and they were a lot more patriotic than I've ever seen here in America.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's
Speaking
fireworks.
of July 4th, they had fireworks going off all night here, and then the next night there were still people setting off illegal fireworks. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to that one time I was in Canada for Canada Day, best fireworks I've ever seen in my life.
I mean, if you want to see good fireworks on July 4th, you go to New York.
Yeah.
Or New York, basically, or Los Angeles. You don't stay in the suburbs of God knows where.
Sure.
Not going to get, freaking multi-million-dollar fireworks displays here. So, the Purge, I guess we should explain the concept of the Purge for anybody who doesn't know what the Purge is.
And I was trying to find where they came up with this concept. I couldn't find a definitive thing with either James DeMonaco or someone else being like, yeah, this is where we came up with this. But, it's not, one, it's not too out there of a concept, and two, it's been done in like a lot of other stories before.
It was
Or it's,
actually
like,
done
to
on a
some
Star
extent-
Trek episode that I never watched, that I just found out. And I think James DeMonaco said, or at least insinuated for the first Purge, the fourth one, that he had seen this episode of Star Trek at some point. So
Right, but
whether or
that's-
not he took the idea from there is, once again, not definitive. But he did insinuate, or at least indicate, that he had seen it.
Sure. There are other things
It's
that,
called Night of the Archons, I think.
yeah, there are other things that sort of do something similar to this as well.
Yeah, but the Star Trek episode is like directly the Purge, because it's like 12 hours, all crime on this random planet
Yeah.
is legal, so
Well, regardless, they had the idea, and we sort of mentioned how that was pitched and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, once they actually started making the movie, I was reading and watching a bunch of stuff, interviews with actors, and a lot of them were like, yeah, James DeMonaco is, he's a director and writer who he gets stuff done. Like, we come in, we work, and, we just, everything's on schedule, on budget, and we just get the movie out, which is like great for people making movies, right? Not good for like discussing interesting things that happen behind the scenes. No big real stories, no massive upheavals, no major accidents, no like deaths on set.
I remember we were talking about Insidious, and we were like, man, the production of these movies was boring. Yeah, we didn't know anything. We didn't know anything. Production of the Purge movies can literally be summed up in, they made the movies without incident.
There were a couple interesting things on Anarchy and Election Year.
I guess.
But like, I mean, that's good from like the movie maker's perspective, right? Like, you come in, you get the job done, you get the movie out.
Yeah, but it's bad for us
Yeah,
on
it
this
is.
podcast.
It is.
So,
So as far as casting goes, nothing really, they didn't have too many. The actors weren't that big name. I think Ethan Hawke was probably the biggest on the first one. The
I
kid,
think so, yeah.
the kid, I looked up the kid. Sorry, what was his name? Let me look this up. Max Burkholder, wrote down his name. He's actually in a lot of stuff, surprisingly. I think other than maybe Ethan Hawke, as far as the first one goes, he's like the biggest sort of name. Maybe not name, but like he's in quite a bit of things, quite a few things.
He was on CSI New York, CSI Miami as well. He was on The Orville. Interesting.
Yeah, the other two, I wrote down their names because there was like nothing for this in terms of interesting things about how it was made. So we had Ethan, the family at least. No one else was even named in this.
Yeah. Well, the neighbor had a name. The lady,
Yeah, well, whatever.
whatever
I mean, like,
her name was.
the homeless vet wasn't even named in this. He was in the later two. And the Purgers were never named or anything. We had Ethan Hawke playing the dad, Lena Headey, I don't know how to pronounce that, playing the mom, Adelaide Kane playing the daughter, and Max Burkholder playing the son. So Ethan Hawke is at least somewhat of a name.
Yeah.
He was in Dead Poets Society. I didn't know that. He was one of the kids in that. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Really overrated in my opinion.
Oh, okay. I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you have to go to like an Eastern boarding school to like get that movie or like really appreciate that movie. I mean, it had Robin Williams in it, but yeah.
I don't know how Robin Williams like relates to appreciating the movie. You kind of threw that into the same sentence there.
I mean, it has him in it. Like, if you want to watch a Robin Williams movie, he's in it. He plays like a quote unquote inspirational teacher.
Quote unquote inspirational.
I mean, you know what that movie is, right? It's pretty famous.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's one of his bigger roles, even though he's been in a lot of big time stuff.
I think so. Ethan Hawke was also in the Magnificent Seven reboot.
Yeah. Yeah, he was. That's a movie that I almost never do this. I'll watch a movie from beginning to end, no matter how bad or good it is. But this Magnificent Seven movie, I just turned off after like 15 minutes. I watched the original too. The original wasn't great. We watched the original for this podcast, and it wasn't great. It was all right, but it wasn't great. But that new one, I just couldn't stand.
I rather enjoyed the new one. I mean, the original was better in my opinion.
Well, that's saying something, I guess. He was also in Gattaca,
Oh
which is
man,
interesting.
Gattaca, that
Cult classic
classic,
movie.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen Gattaca. It's okay, I
Gattaca
guess.
is directed by the guy who directed The Host, which is that movie based on Stephanie Meyer's first post-Twilight novel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I actually watched that movie. I didn't know it was written by, or I didn't know it was based on Stephanie Meyer's book, and like halfway through, I was like, man, this is actually really bad. And I looked it up halfway through, and I was like, oh, that's why. It was more of a love triangle romance movie than anything like alien or science fiction based, honestly. So if you go into it with that mindset and you like appreciate that type of thing, then you might like it. I didn't know what it was going to be though, and my expectations were way off.
I never watched it because I heard it was terrible.
It was really bad.
So I just stayed away. I heard the Purge movies were of questionable quality.
I mean, we can talk about this for a minute because there's not honestly much else to talk about, but we both heard that like the second one of these was the best, most well received, at least by fans and critics, I guess, are like, yeah, the second one of these is the best. I like the second one the least out of these three.
I like the first one the least. In my opinion, they get increasingly better, so Election Year was my favorite.
And we'll talk about that when we talk how it works as a trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Ethan Hawke was also, he's in a bunch of stuff, other things. He was in the 1998 Great Expectations, and he played Hamlet in the 2000 Hamlet.
Yeah, so basically the point is he's a pretty well-known actor.
But not that well-known. He's not like one of the huge names. He's just one of the...
He's like a B-list actor.
Sure. Lena Headey, don't know how you pronounce that. But she was in a lot of TV stuff. She's in Game of Thrones, I think, as a regular character. I don't watch that show, but she's in it.
Oh, yeah, she plays Cersei Lannister.
She was in 300.
Right.
And she also does voice acting. She's in Uncle Grandpa and Danger Mouse, which are... Yeah, I mean...
yeah. That's all that needs to be said about those. She was in Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Huh. It's interesting.
Great.
Didn't know there was a
Well, she played the wife of Patrick Wilson in a movie called Zipper. Nice connection to Insidious there.
Is that a Blumhouse movie? Probably is.
Let's find out.
It's probably one of the ones that never made it to theaters.
Nope,
it's
not.
Oh, dang it.
Right, well.
We had Adelaide Kane, who's not in that much. She's in Power Rangers.
Was she in the new Power Rangers movie? No, she wasn't.
No,
okay.
No.
Yeah.
And then we had, again, Max Burkholder as the son, who's actually in quite a few things.
With Reese Wakefield as the leader of the Purgers, who hasn't really done much, although he's supposed to be in the next season of True Detective that has taken like 5 years to get made, but anyway. But yeah, I think
that's the casting. There's really nothing interesting going on there, honestly.
Then they filmed the movie and that was it. Apparently,
it's all in one location, one house.
Yeah,
kind of like Insidious.
The original draft of the script was apparently really violent and bloody and
the final version still is pretty violent.
Well, the first draft apparently was also like super overtly anti-American and just like way over the top violent. And
well, that's also something that they tone up. The first one doesn't really feature that much heavy moralizing. It raises a lot of questions, and you can think about them as it goes on. And I'll talk about more about this when we talk about how it works as a trilogy. But as it goes on, the rhetoric of it definitely becomes more like really in your face.
Yeah, well, I think that's because when they're made. Well, we'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about it.
I think when they're made has an effect on that.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, they.
But yeah, Lemarquier, or whatever the producer's name was, like, yeah, dude, there's a lot of potential here, but we need to make it less violent. So DeMonico kind of toned it down. And I mean, that's the most interesting thing about the script that I could find.
It's still pretty violent. There's still blood splatter all over the place,
but it could be more violent, and that's the important thing,
right?
I guess.
I mean, look, I liked the gratuitous violence in the second and third one. I maybe didn't like those as much as the first one, but the way they really toned up the violence made them better than they otherwise would have been.
I guess. Well, so then I guess that just segues us into
release. They released it, and it made a lot of money. One of the, I guess, 60% of Blumhouse movies that makes it to theaters, and it made a lot of money.
Well, a lot of money for its budget. I'm not going to come out here and say it was a blockbuster that made hundreds of millions of dollars. It made a good ROI.
Well, that's how you have to judge a movie, really. I mean, like, if you make a movie for $15 and it makes $1 million, like, you're going to be jumping up and down for joy. But if you make a movie for, like, 3 million and it makes, like, 3 million, you're not going to be too happy about that.
Well, the first one made about 100 million.
Which is, again, really good.
Yeah, especially for such a small budget movie. And then, well, so apparently DeMonico didn't realize that there was any franchise potential with this, and apparently this he had this idea for the first movie where he was going to put these news. There was going to be this news snippet montage at the end of the movie, because basically the original conception was that in the first movie it was the 10th anniversary of the Purge, so he was going to have this. The news station is going to be running like, quote, history of the Purge, unquote, because he thought audiences would like want to know the history of the Purge, which is something that comes back later and obviously in the new one. But they ended up cutting it for time and brevity's sake in the first movie. So this is just going to be like too much for the audience. But then
I think I agree with that.
Yeah, but then Universal was like going to give DeMonico a bunch of money to basically film those segments as like a companion web series to the movie, and they were going to have like a website dedicated to the Purge, and they were going to have these new segments telling the history of the Purge on this website. Apparently it never ended up happening, and I couldn't find out why it never ended up happening, but I think they just couldn't get the schedules together with DeMonico, and I think it just didn't work out.
Yeah, but luckily they can incorporate, I mean, I didn't read any of this, so this is just speculating, I guess, on my part, but they could have incorporated some of that into Anarchy and Election Year and the first Purge and stuff like that. And that's good, like, not sequel bait, but it's, like, good saving something up your sleeve for a potential, another one.
Yeah, and I think that's what DeMonico said. I think he said a lot of the ideas they had for that, they ended up taking and putting into the later Purge movies. So, yeah.
Which I think is good. I liked the contained, again, this is something we're going to talk about later, but I really liked the contained nature of the first one. Mm-hmm. And, this History of the Purge segment doesn't necessarily fit into that sort of scheme.
It doesn't. But also, like, DeMonico said that the reason why the second one, like, goes out of the house is because he said that he could already tell from the first cut of the movie that a lot of audiences were going to be disappointed that they don't leave the house in the first movie.
Right.
And he could tell that a lot of people, because the way the movie was being sold was like this, the Purge, people killing each other for one night, and then it just never leaves this one house, and he could already tell people were going to be upset about that, which is why in the second movie he decided they were going to take it out of the house no matter what.
I mean, maybe not upset, I don't know what word he used, maybe not upset, but like just disappointed.
Upset was the word he used.
But like, I mean, the thing is, one of the actor who played the husband in the second one, he watched, I guess this will lead us into the casting for the second one, but he watched the first Purge movie, the 2013 one, a couple weeks before casting opened for the second one, which is why he decided to audition, I guess. Mm-hmm. But he also said, like, yeah, I was surprised that they didn't leave the house.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, that's also, again, something we're going to talk about in a little bit. But like, there's definitely like a trend in these movies. The first one's this contained from the perspective of these, fairly rich people in this house. Second one goes out into the streets, explores this from like the perspective of people who don't have enough, like, money and to reinforce their house and stuff. And the third one is like a sort of a political perspective of like the Purge itself.
The third one is almost a hybrid of the other two, which I want to talk about later.
But second one in terms of casting, the names in the second one are honestly even smaller, I think, than the first one. And I mean, we can talk a little bit about the acting. I didn't think the acting for these movies was spectacular.
Mm-hmm. It was okay. I feel like the acting got better through the movies.
I don't agree, because I think this acting in the second one was the worst. I think the husband and wife were honestly not that great, and I don't think
husband and wife who were married in real life, we should mention.
Yeah, they were married in real life. The daughter also was not all there, really. And I didn't think some of the other, like the side characters, whatever, like the family they go and visit, nor the auction type of thing they were doing, none of those characters were really all there.
You didn't like the family they visited? They just collapsed as soon as they arrived. Apparently the sister waited till like 3 hours before the Purge ends to kill her sister.
Yeah.
It's a Purge-free household, allegedly. Or it was.
Until probably unnamed character came along. Nah, she probably had a name. But I mean, yeah, casting, again, nothing really interesting, nothing really out there happening behind the scenes. They cast the movie.
Well, the guy who plays the husband, Zach Gilford, I think is his name. I want to just double check that. Yeah, Zach Gilford. He said that basically as soon as he talked to James DeMonaco was like, "This is the guy I want." But then Michael Bay was like, "No, no, no. We need to put him through the test. We have to like make sure. We have to see how he's doing. We have to put him through the audition, and then."
Are you sure this isn't for Frank Grillo or Griot or however you say his name?
No, this is Zach Gilford.
Huh.
Because he was talking about how great it was to work with his wife on the movie as well while he was doing this. But anyway, and then he was like, he went to the audition, and then DeMonaco was, yeah, yep, he proved himself. We're casting him, and Michael Bay was like, okay.
All right.
I tried to really make that story sound really exciting, but because it's not
you
really.
Just can't. Some stories you just can't make exciting.
I tried really hard, guys. I tried
like
so
Insidious,
hard.
The Last Key. Just kidding.
Oh boy. But yeah, that's it. That's like all I could find that was interesting about the casting for the second one.
Frank Grillo is in a number of things.
I feel like it's actually pronounced Frank Grillo.
I don't know how it's pronounced.
Does a Wikipedia page have a pronunciation? Sometimes for tough names, they put pronunciations on the Wikipedia page.
Nope.
No. He's
in enough things that you might have seen him in something else.
Yeah, there was one actor in the second movie who I recognized, Jack Conley, who plays the kind of head of the government gang. He's been in a lot of stuff. The New Founding
Fathers?
Yeah, the government gang that's killing people.
Oh, right, that guy.
Who gets killed right at the end of the movie. He's been in a lot of stuff. He was in Apollo 13 back in the day. He was in Suburbicon, like, just last year. He's been in Fast and the Furious.
G-Force. I don't know what G-Force is.
An animated movie about hamsters.
Oh, yeah, I do know what that is.
He was in The Mentalist, but where I recognized him from initially was NCIS, and then also from Suburbicon, which I did see, which was a garbage movie.
Has anyone in these movies not been in, like, CSI or CSI Miami or something like that? So it looks like they all have.
I think literally every actor in the universe has been on either CSI, NCIS, or SVU. Let's
or
just
any,
be
or,
frank.
I mean, not even SVU, like any of the Law and Order shows.
I
don't know
how
how many.
A billion
like,
of them.
Yeah, there's like 10 of them at least or something.
Well, SVU is the only one that's still running.
SVU is like also the most popular and most well-known one.
Probably because it's got Ice-T.
Well, isn't that, this is a massive tangent, I guess, but isn't that the only one where they investigate the case and then they go in the courtroom too or something like that?
No, that was the original one was more about that. Then the later iterations played with the format a lot more. The initial conception for Law and Order was the law part, which is about half the episode, and then the order part, which is about the other half. Then they started to kind of mix it up with the later ones. So
yeah, well, I mean, I've never watched the show, and I probably never will.
Yeah, wouldn't call it a paragon of television. SVU, that is. I use it for background noise when I'm working.
Wow. Anyway, the second one came out.
Yeah,
and
amazing.
There was one.
What a plot twist! The second one was released.
There was one interesting thing about this one. In the scene where they're in the tunnel, they used some, trained rat actors,
right,
I guess.
I saw this.
But some of them weren't, and some of the actors freaked out about rats jumping on them.
Yeah, Zach Gilford talked about this in his interview too. He was like, there were 10 to 20 rats in there, and we were all freaking out because some of them weren't doing what they were supposed to, and there were all these rats around, and we didn't know what we were doing. I was like, you go, Zach. You go.
Yeah, no real interesting animal rights things, like with the snakes from Indiana Jones or anything like that.
No one really
No.
cared. They just treated the rats really well.
Yeah.
I mean, then again, this is like a history of cinema thing, like the history of animals in cinema has changed a lot, or the treatment of animals in movie making has changed a lot since the 80s when
I'm sure there are many more regulations.
Yeah,
now.
There's a lot more regulations now. There's a lot more animal rights groups talking about it, and there was just a lot more, I guess, government oversight about it now. So,
well, PETA got big in the 80s, didn't they?
Government oversight, yeah.
I mean, PETA, say what you want about them, but they are they sort of put a lot of this stuff on the map. I mean, despite their near terrorist activities at points. or not even near. I just call them terrorist activities, but like they put a lot of this stuff on people's radar.
They do eco-terrorism. They did ruin was it the Nazca lines, I think? No, that was
Really?
Greenpeace. That was Greenpeace.
Really?
Greenpeace put all these letters out so that they could be like seen from airplanes, and then the government was like, "You just ruined like a national treasure."
But like they're just letters, right? They can clean them up, right?
But all the footprints from the people putting the letters out.
Nice.
Yeah. That was like a huge thing for Greenpeace. Kind of destroyed them, to be honest. You don't hear much about Greenpeace now. It's kind of because of that.
I mean, you don't hear much about PETA either because they like really fell off the radar after doing some, non-legitimate stuff. But,
Yeah,
like,
well, my
still.
second year of college, this was 2 years ago, I think, 2.5. PETA came to my college with like this
really?
virtual reality thing where you could be a chicken. So I went and I was like, oh man, yeah, virtual reality, let's do this. So put the goggles on you. This is, I don't know.
What
I feel like
the
this
hell?
is I feel like this is pertinent to our discussion about weird things PETA does. They put the goggles on you and you're a chicken and you look around and you've got all these chicken buddies and you're just frolicking like in the wild and then okay, so this is in like a dark tent and there's this person in there. Okay. You better
God.
brace yourself. Just brace yourself. Because then you get grabbed.
Mm-hmm.
You get grabbed, and when you get grabbed in the virtual reality, the person in the room like actually grabs you. That set my heart rate through the roof. And then you get. Were you a chicken? I think it was a chicken. You might have been a pig.
This is actually relevant to some of the expanded Purge universe stuff, honestly.
Yeah, well, so then you get taken to a slaughterhouse, so then you're on a conveyor belt going into the slaughterhouse.
You're probably a chicken then, because I think
you're a chicken.
Because pigs aren't like on conveyor belts in slaughterhouses. They have them walk through
Yeah.
mazes, actually, a lot of the times.
You were a chicken. You were a chicken, I remember. And you get taken into the slaughterhouse. You're like on a conveyor belt and you look around and you're just moving into the slaughterhouse, and the person in the room like blasts you with air to simulate like the stuff in the slaughterhouse.
The
And then
electric
you die.
bath.
And then you die.
Yeah. They dump chickens in electric baths to like kill them. A lot of them don't die from it though. But yeah.
And I remember that I went to this for extra credit for a writing class because my writing class was about like animal cognition. And I remember writing on the blog that we had to keep for class, I wrote this long thing about how PETA was going way overboard and I was really uncomfortable with
Wow.
this.
They should have done it with pigs, honestly, because pigs are, I guess, a lot smarter than chickens.
And then you come out and then you get ambushed by some of the PETA people
God.
working there. They're like, so, you're going to eat meat now? And I was like, I'm already vegetarian. They're like, so what's stopping you from going vegan, huh? Huh? What is it?
What?
Is it cheese? Is it cheese, huh? And I'm like,
What? Wow. Oh, God.
is it cheese?
What did you say in response?
Yeah. I just said yeah. Then I walked away. I was like, thanks. Bye.
Oh, God.
But yeah, so back to the point at hand. There's a lot more animal rights things now. And presumably also, I feel like James DeMonaco just, because he gets things done on time and under budget, was like, yeah, we're going to take real good care of these rats because I just don't want to have to deal with it. Apparently the second one was filmed in roughly chronological order, which if you know movie making is actually pretty rare.
Yep.
Typically they'll film movies like way out of order.
Yeah, it's
Because-
weird. It's weird that they did this in chronological order. Thinking about it, because there's a lot of jumping back and forth before those, the three sort of stories converge.
Yeah, so I think the thing is that I think that's why it was described as roughly chronological, because from once they converge, I think all that was filmed chronologically, but then all the parts before that were like, would have been difficult to film
Yeah.
that chronologically, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second one came out, once again, made a lot of money, so there's a third one.
And a fourth one. Casting for the third one was probably it wasn't interesting. Probably wasn't as difficult because they got Grillo or Griot back.
Mm-hmm.
They got what's his name, something
Edward Hodge.
Edwin Hodge back from the first one. He was in all three of them. The only character who was in all three of them.
Elizabeth Mitchell as,
Yeah, I didn't know who she was.
as Senator Roan, who is apparently in Santa Claus.
The Santa Claus, the Tim Allen one?
Yes, the Santa Claus 2 and 3. When are we doing that as a trilogy?
Probably some Christmas where there's nothing else coming out this year.
She was also on SVU and CSI. She was on SVU twice. Wow. Interesting. She's on The Expanse in the most recent season that I haven't watched yet. Also,
again, a lot of these characters are more TV actors than movie actors, it seems like.
yeah, Betty Gabriel was in the third one. I didn't realize where I recognized her from until...
Oh, she's an upgrade. Lee Wannell's new movie.
Oh, yeah. That's probably where I recognized her from first initially, because I saw that most recently. But she is most well known for playing Georgina in Get Out. The lady, the first...
The
maid. The first, like, lady you meet. Yeah. The grandma.
It was the grandma, right? To
Yes.
spoil that movie
Yes.
a little bit.
Yes. So, she was, like, the only real actress I recognized in the
And
that
she's
movie.
she's more of an up-and-coming actress, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Because, she was in Upgrade, which was a really good movie, by the way.
Huh.
And she did a really good job in that movie, too. And other than that, the third one is a lot more political than the first two.
It came out during, an actual election year. It wasn't called election year for nothing.
Yeah, so that was the thing. I think it was explicitly more political because of when it came out. I mean, it came out during the very contentious presidential election of 2016.
Yeah, and it probably dealt with, we'll get into this more in a minute. This is probably actually a good transition into that, but, it had the neo-Nazis as big antagonists in the movie.
Right.
And there was a lot of, stuff in the media about that in 2016 and even now as well.
I mean, even the marketing was explicitly supposed to evoke the election because, Donald Trump was like, my 2020 slogan is going to be Keep America Great because, his slogan in 2016 was Make America Great Again. And, so one of the taglines for the movie on the posters was Keep America Great. So, and also the election in the movie even is supposed to, mirror the one in real life, right?
Yeah, somewhat at least.
Female opponent up against the liberal woman up against the ultra-conservative man, right?
Yeah.
That's about as far as the similarities go, really, because the
Purge starts.
Because the Purge starts, and because their ideologies in the movie are, the new founding fathers are supposed to be like an ultra-conservative party, but even still this isn't true anymore. I'll say their values are supposed to be this super exaggerated version of real life, but not so exaggerated anymore.
I mean, you can trace a lot of the stuff that happens in the third one to the earliest British settlers of the Americas, because there's that Puritan, there's that very extremely religious stuff at the end of this, where the Purge is going to purify us, and there's the holy water and all of that stuff.
Yeah, the third one is a lot more explicit in the fact that the new founding fathers and just
or at least affiliated religiously in some way with not evangelicalism, but some weird form of
religion,
Christianity.
Yeah. Just Christianity. It's this distorted dystopian version of Christianity where they believe killing will set their sins free.
Yeah. Well,
which is weird considering one of the commandments is thou shalt not kill.
Yeah, well.
That might be a commentary on how,
how distorted people, how people use religion to justify really effed up stuff that they do.
That, but also I was going to say how people don't. This is really delicate.
They don't take religion into a modern context. They just look at it and be like, well, they cut off people's hands in 300 BC.
Yeah, that, but also I was going to say people taking quotes from the Bible either out of context or just explicitly only believing one part of the Bible while disregarding another. There's a whole section in Leviticus about how you're not supposed to tattoo yourself, but people just completely ignore something like that. Right?
You're not supposed to what yourself?
Tattoo. You're not supposed to have tattoos.
Okay. Didn't know that. It's interesting.
So it may be a commentary on people
That's
who
not a big thing though.
It's not, but it's
But no, I mean, I think I get what you're saying. People
will take quotes that that justify their beliefs but ignore ones that don't, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, but that's also like the thing. I
They
think
like
a
pick
lot
and
of,
choose things that like fit their version of events instead
Sure.
of looking at the entire body of work and then forming their beliefs around that.
I mean, there's also like just now explicitly talking about the Bible. There's so much like contradictory information because of the number of sources and number of people who actually wrote the stuff that makes up the Bible. There's plenty of like conflicting stuff in there, and that's like an actual big problem I think today, especially in the U.S. is like people not taking not only the Bible but like other religious books as well. People like not taking that into a modern era, right? They're like look at these
Yeah.
things and don't real not or they don't acknowledge in their own ideology that this was written in like a different time. And there's some things that still apply today, and there's definitely good lessons to be learned. But there's some things that, like you
Don't
just have to
kill.
leave in the past. Yeah, exactly.
Definitely think don't kill isn't one of the ones you should leave in the past.
Yeah, well, I mean, according to the new founding fathers, it is. So I guess now we can get into how this worked as a trilogy. And I'll just start off by saying I think surprisingly well.
Yeah, I agree. I think it works really well as a trilogy, actually. I think the escalation works really well. I think there's a natural progression in escalation from the first to the third movie.
There are multiple sort of arcs or trends over the first one. Like the first one, it dealt with a single family. The second one has these different people coming together, and the third one is like an entire nation is at stake and stuff like that. The first one deals with the wealthy. The second one deals with the at least not as wealthy. The third one deals with the coming together of like this politician and who has like all the protection she needs if she wants it, and this guy who's like struggling to protect his store and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the first one is like, in my opinion, the first one is like a commentary on like the hyper wealthy, right? They live in this huge house. They just built an extension under their house. They own this supposedly impenetrable security system. It's the 1% of the 1%.
Sure, and the dad even takes advantage of the people who buy security systems because he works for a security company. But the security systems, as we find out, don't even work because he installs one of his own systems on his own house, and like that just completely fails when they bring in the truck.
Yeah, he like tells his wife that they're not like 100% secure. He's like, but you sell these, and he's like, yeah, and we know that they're not 100% secure, right? Also, a commentary on capitalism. Like people will do anything to make more money, right? Even if it means, in this universe, it means selling a faulty security system and potentially getting families killed.
Sure.
And the second one is like a commentary on like the dichotomy between the poor and the rich, especially in this world where, being poor means you're literally dead. You're dead when the purge comes around.
Yeah,
that's like a big thing in the second one with the revolutionary leader.
I mean, it's brought up in the first one too. The first one, and this is something I guess we'll talk about this in a minute. But I like the first one a lot more than the second and third one because of stuff like this. But anyway, continue.
Well, so the second one makes this a lot more apparent with the revolutionary characters. Like, if you're poor, you're gonna die. Like the point of the purge is to kill off the poor. And I found a website. There's this website called debate.org or debate.com where you basically it poses a question and then you're for or against it, basically in like a really reductionist view of the website. And there was one that was like, oh, should we have a purge? Was surprisingly only like 59% no, 41% yes.
Well, I mean, people were just trolling it or whatever.
No, but like that was the thing. A lot of the comments on the yes side were like, if we had a purge, then like we'd all be really wealthy because would unburden our society and we would like kill off the poor. And I was like, do you honestly believe that that you would survive the first the first purge if that were true, right? Like the first purge that comes around is going to wipe out a substantial portion of just the poor and homeless because those are going to be the easiest people to kill. Like even for people with not a lot of money, that's going to be the first people. And the second movie touches on this where it's like, if you're homeless or you're poor, you have no chance at surviving tonight, basically.
And I mean, even middle class people, like once you start getting to upper middle class and like wealthy territory, that's when you have like a better chance of surviving. But anyone below that really sort of doesn't.
Yeah, it's like a really distorted view of survival of the fittest almost, where in this case, fittest means most wealthy.
Right.
And then the third one is like, the third one, in my opinion, is almost like a meld of the first two, because the first one is like these people just trying to survive the night in a house, and the second one is these people trying to get basically across town
Yeah, that, I
It's
mean
like
that's
it's like a journey.
that's another thing too. Something we touched on before is the first one was confined to this house because of budget and sort of story and scope reasons of the movie, really. And the second one really expanded on that, showing you what happens outside on the streets.
Yeah, and then in my opinion, the third one is like a meld of those because you have the senator who tries to just survive the night in her house, but then
Things
due
go
to
wrong.
unforeseen circumstances, she has to escape. And she's not like journeying to a specific location like in the second one. She's just trying to survive in the third one.
Right.
So that's what, in my opinion, how it's kind of like a meld of the first two, which I think makes it a stronger conclusion to the trilogy, I guess.
Sure, we can talk about some of the thematic stuff that's going on here. We've already sort of hinted at it, but there's definitely a trend with that too, right? The first one is sort of the least moralizing of these three, and it sort of gets more in your face, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I liked the first one because the first one brings up a lot of stuff. It doesn't really necessarily tell you what to think about it, but it brings up a lot of stuff about like the nature of law and like whether that precedes, whether like written law or de facto, I guess, law precedes like, sorry, de jure law like precedes de facto. Like, does written law precede like people actually wanting these things to be rules that society follows and stuff like that? And I mean, I didn't really think too much about it because I didn't think these movies were good enough to like reinvestigate and rewatch again, but like the first one definitely brought up a lot of really interesting stuff, and I think the characters in that one sort of approach this from their own different angles.
Well, I like all the movies because I think they pose a lot of interesting psychological questions. I also found an article on Psychology Today, which probably isn't a reputable psychology source, but they basically talked about the psychology of the Purge and whether or not the Purge would actually work in real life, because the movie proposes that the Purge lowers unemployment and lowers crime rates because it allows people to basically, it allows them like a catharsis once a year to just let everything out.
Right.
And this article that I was reading basically talked about how that's like a common misconception of psychology, is that in fact when you have that release like that, when you perform violent acts like that, it actually, instead of releasing your anger, actually tends to increase the likelihood that you're going to commit crimes again.
Yeah. There's this, I was watching a video about it. There's this place in Portland, Oregon, and I'm sure there are many other places that are similar to this, but basically what it is you pay however much it costs to get in, and you go alone into this room. They give you a pair of goggles, I think, and maybe some other protective equipment, but you go into this room like it's just full of junk, and they give you a baseball bat, and you can just beat the hell out of like old TVs and chairs and tables and stuff like that, as a way to like release your anger, I guess.
Yeah.
And people were like really attacking this place, like, hey, this isn't a good thing to like offer to people.
Yeah. Yeah, because once you get that first taste, so to speak, you're more likely to do it again. That's why, a lot of people in prison are repeat offenders because there's no like that's not necessarily a comment on them, like that's just basically saying that there's no reform in the prison system. It's just lock people up and then release, but there's no attempt at actually reforming criminal offenders. But the point is that I'm trying to make is that the Purge movies pitch this idea as they have this one night where they basically let everything out, and then for the rest of the year, just nobody does anything. And the point is that, in real life, it's unlikely that that's actually what would happen. What would actually happen is probably they would let everything out, and then they probably wouldn't stop.
Yeah. That's fine for the movie, though. It creates like this political debate, like, should we really continue this, or should we stop because it's doing like these good things for the country, supposedly.
Right. And speaking of the political aspect, that's why I think the third one gets a lot more in your face about it, because it was released during the election year,
right.
Because I think the first one started as this speculative, I guess, work where it was like, they just took this idea that they thought would be interesting, which I think is interesting. What if all crime was legal for 12 hours or whatever, right? By the time they get to the third one, I think they were like, the policies that we proposed in this movie that like led to the Purge are getting scarily close to being real. So they had to,
and also like the epidemic of like violence in America was there. There's like between 2013 and 2016 saw a huge spike, right?
I mean, and just also the election, starting as early as 2015, because that's when the primaries started.
Yeah.
All the way through 2016, just really fractured a lot of America.
Yeah.
And that kind of fracturing is in the third movie they imply that there was like an economic collapse, and then that's how the new founding fathers came to power, because they were like, oh, we can fix it, and they basically staged a sweep of the government elections. But I think the reason why it's a lot more obvious in the third one with those political beliefs, or the political themes, I guess is what I'm actually saying,
is because of when it came out.
When it came out. James DeMonaco talked about this whole thing about the timeline of the Purge he had plotted out for the first movie that was going to be the web series. He's like, I had this whole thing planned out. Like, it starts with the legalization of guns, and he was like, and then they legalized they're drugs.
Already legal, but like that's the thing. More guns, I guess.
He was like legalizing guns. Reducing government oversight on purchase of guns, and then he was like, and then it goes to like legalization of drugs, like heroin, and then he's like, and then it goes on from there. He's like, I did a lot of research into this. I like plotted out the whole thing over like a whole like 10-year span about how the Purge would come to be.
Yeah,
and he was like, it's like dangerously close to being real. And I think that's why the fourth movie also touches on this. The fourth movie probably touches on this a lot more because it's the story of the first Purge.
Yeah, we'll have to see though, because we're watching that one for the next episode.
Right, and we should mention, according to the Amazon trivia, when we're watching the third one, it's like the third movie was going to be the prequel telling how we came to accept the Purge, but then they were like, let's
capitalize on the election.
Let's capitalize on the election, but also Frank Grillo's character was like really popular in the second one, so they wanted to bring him back, so that's why the third one is more of a direct sequel.
That's probably, looking back, why the second one was so popular, because the first one doesn't really have like that hero character who's trying to get revenge for his son, and then eventually, he doesn't take revenge in the end. That's a character that people can really like, in my opinion.
Well, so that's why the first one, in my opinion, is really difficult for me to like, because I don't feel like I can root for any of the characters.
Oh, I like that. I don't care about rooting for the characters. I just like to see all the effed up stuff they do.
I mean, yeah, if that's why you go to see a movie, then you'll probably like the first one. I just like there to be at least one character who has something you can root for. Like in the second one, you have the cop who's like going on vigilante justice, and you're like, is he going to purge or is he not going to purge? And then at the end of the movie, you find out he doesn't. But you think maybe, and then the second movie does a really good job of proposing that maybe he actually has like a legitimate reason for doing this, because this guy was a drunk driver and he killed the guy's son, and then he got off on like a technicality or something.
Right.
Which is like, I think part of what the second movie is trying to say is that this is what you would expect people to do in the Purge, right? You would take it out on someone who wronged you in some way. But
that's not what people do, really.
But yeah, that's kind of what the other movies are saying, is that while you may expect that, like typically that's not what's going to happen. You're going to have these people who just go out and just kill for fun.
Torch like people who are homeless people trying to hide and wherever they can or whatever, like we saw in the second one.
But not even that, because in the third one there's the girl who killed her parents and then goes to rob the store, and she's like, I already took care of my parents tonight, and it's like, people just kill for fun kind of thing.
Yeah.
The second one touches on it too, sorry, go ahead.
I just like movies that are able to like dematize certain things in like an effective way, and I thought the first one was more effective in doing that than the other two, which is why I liked it. But I don't want to tell other people like why they should watch movies. So if you really want to like root for a character and have a character that you can like, sure. I don't care though.
And that's why, I don't know, I like the third one, because it's like, by the third one they've built up the Purge to be this terrible thing, and like, so you're really rooting for Senator Rowan to get out of there and win the election, right?
Yeah.
More so than any of the other characters, which is, in my opinion, why the third one is one of the best. And also the third one, in my opinion, just has a lot more interesting interplay between the characters and just, in my opinion, more interesting plot. Especially with the whole plot to like assassinate the minister who's Rowan's opponent.
Well, the action, I think, in the third one, because the third one takes a lot of cues from the second one, at least in the way that, like, they're running through streets and stuff, and they're going through these action scenes or whatever, and I thought the action was done better in the third one. There was a lot less, like, downtime, really, if that makes sense. Edge of your seat, a little more edge of your seat in the second one. But, overall, I think these actually worked surprisingly well as a trilogy. They're not the best movies in the world, but, like, as a trilogy, they do a pretty good job.
Yeah, as a trilogy, it really comes together. As a trilogy, I think it works really well. And I think there are, like, really good moments in these movies. I don't think they're, like, just all mediocre or all bad or
I would watch them, honestly. Like, I would recommend them.
Yeah, no, I would recommend them. Maybe not all at once though.
Probably not all at once.
Just because I think like for us when we watched it all at once, I think we started to I think maybe it's just us in particular, but I think when we watch movies all at once, we start to pick out all the negative things about them instead of all the positives.
Sure, but like if you do want to watch all these at once, they're not that long.
No, and you can easily do it. I mean, we started
Like
about
8?
8:20, and we finished like
Almost
a little
2,
bit before 2.
Yeah.
Which still left like 9 hours in the day, depending when you go to bed. So, yeah.
Expanded universe stuff for the Purge? There actually is some. I mean, there's the new one coming out, or that's already out, actually.
There's the TV show.
There's a TV show coming out, supposedly, this year.
There is a trailer out for it, I think, that I didn't watch.
Didn't the trailer for it just come out, a few days ago, actually?
Like a week ago, I think, from when we were recording this.
Yeah, and they actually have, at various Universal Studios parks...
During Halloween,
during the Halloween scare nights or whatever they're called, they have Purge events. I watched a couple of them online. Mm-hmm. They're typical. If you've seen any of these types of things, they're not that scary. There's people running at you with like fake chainsaws and stuff like that.
Right.
And I guess it depends how many people are there, but if you're in a massive crowd, this isn't really necessarily that scary, and they're not that high budget. So, whatever, make of that whatever you will. But I thought the acting from some of the actors, not just the guys in masks that run at you, but they actually have some people like saying things in microphones and whatever. And I thought the acting in this was better than in the movies. Yeah.
Oof. Well, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, especially on this podcast in particular, how acting in movies is less about the actor and more about the director. Right. So, yeah, James DeMonaco may be getting things in on time and without any incident, but...
He's probably not reshooting scenes again and again to get the perfect scene. And that's also the thing, is like the people who work at these events are paid to say the same 2 or 3 lines over and over again, night after night. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot easier to perfect and like get better at than doing a whole movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, there was a Rick and Morty episode about they go to a planet that's purging.
Wow.
They stop there for gas, and then the guy's like, "You better lock up tonight." And Rick's like, "Wait, why?" And he's like, "We'll purge tonight." Rick's like, "Oh shit, the purging!"
I despise that show, just for the record.
And other than that, I think that's all in terms of expanded universe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it.
Star Trek
I was
episode.
surprised there's no like video game version of this where you have to survive a certain amount of time in the Purge.
They could like really easily do a battle royale style game for this.
Yeah,
I think.
Yep.
Like a PUBG style game for the Purge. That could actually be really interesting. Set it in like DC or Los Angeles, and just make it like the Purge. Too late now.
It's not too late. They have I guess it's too late.
Yeah, the battle royale bandwagon is slowly driving by. So
yeah.
Anyway,
I think that's it.
You can email us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on the Purge.
Would you purge? Probably don't.
What would you do during the Purge? You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Triple Play. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us on Twitter at TYD Podcast, and follow us on Twitter. And next time, like we mentioned, we're watching the first Purge, which is the 4th Purge movie. Mm-hmm. But after that, we're watching the Predator trilogy. But until then, the end.